Again, good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to those who may be joining us on our recording. It is my pleasure to welcome you to another National Institute for Congestion Reduction webinar. My name is Stephanie. It is my pleasure to introduce our presenter today, Sarah Hendricks, for pilot application of biometric-based vehicle occupancy detection on managed lanes for congestion reduction. So, Sarah has worked in the field of transportation demand management for most of her career. Um, she at Cutter has worked for the TDM program, providing technical assistance and training on a number of topics. So Sarah's bio is provided on the NICER website if you'd like to read it in its entirety. But with that, Sarah, I'm going to hand it over to you.
Thank you, Stephanie. So I can take control now?
Yes, you can.
All right. There we go. Great. So hello, I'm Sarah Hendricks. Just gotta, okay. I'm Sarah Hendricks, and I'm going to tell you about this NICER project that I worked on with Phil Winters, who is the Transportation Demand Management Program Director at Cutter. So we tested the accuracy and reliability of a biometric vehicle occupancy detection technology that was a mobile application. So carpool participants in our study downloaded the mobile app onto their phones, and the app measured whether there was one person or more than one person in the vehicle. And then because of this long title, people involved in the study simply referred to it as the USF carpool study, USF carpool study. So I'd like to first start off with a few acknowledgments. The USDOT Office of the Assistant Secretary for Research and Technology, University Transportation Centers program provided us with this grant with support from the Florida Department of Transportation Transit Office, with the gracious partnership of Ride Flag Technologies Incorporated that allowed us to test their app, and then also South Florida Commuter Services and Commute Tampa Bay of the Tampa Bay Area Regional Transit Authority. Those two commuter assistance programs provided us with assistance in recruiting participants for our study. So if you've ever noticed, most motor vehicles during the morning traffic peak period have less than 2 people inside their vehicles. And this is referred to as single occupant vehicles, or SOV. So nationally, average vehicle occupancy is about 1.2 people per vehicle. Here in the Tampa Bay area, my hometown, it's 1.18. So I decided to use that as an example here. So this depicts a typical private car has 3 other seats in addition to the driver's seat. So what this means is there's this vast underutilized capacity of our transportation system in the form of empty seats in buses, vans, and in single occupant vehicles. So how can we incentivize filling those empty seats? So one way is to reward people for carpooling, often by giving carpoolers discounted or toll-free access to managed lanes. So many urban areas offer carpool incentives with programs that require people to register their carpools in advance. Tolls can be paid based on an in-vehicle transponder that is set to either SOV or HOV, high occupancy vehicle, by the motorist, or a sticker tag, RFID, to read the transponder setting. And then there's automated license plate recognition to match the vehicle to the toll transaction. However, this relies on the honor system. Switchable transponders are honor-based and can be easy to defeat simply by setting the RFID transponder to HOV. So this leads to lost revenue and degraded managed lane performance. And there are many studies out there that have shown HOV misdeclaration, meaning an SOV passing as an HOV, rates 33% and higher. So many HOV or hot lanes, these programs enforce vehicle occupancy through visual inspection and highway traffic stops by law enforcement. This is expensive. It causes a safety hazard. and it can slow down traffic. Other methods include out-of-vehicle systems, in-vehicle systems, and app-based systems. So there are camera systems with automated software that detects the number of vehicle occupants. But this does not completely eliminate the labor required for manual verification, for quality control, and there are privacy concerns. These cameras are attached to either gantries or in fixed roadside locations, but this equipment is exposed to the weather, it's vulnerable to vandalism, it requires installation at multiple locations, they need power supply and regular maintenance. And then there are these in-vehicle occupancy detection technologies that use sensors. And these may be included in new vehicle manufacturing, but we're years away from having sensors that detect vehicle occupancy as standard equipment in most of the private vehicle fleet, and there are privacy concerns. And then there are app-to-app systems that can count the number of device signals in proximity inside or near a vehicle. But this is problematic for those occupants that may not have a phone. And then also this method is easy to defeat by carrying more than one phone. So the purpose of this study was to field test an emerging mobile app technology to measure and document its ability to detect and record vehicle occupancy. So the first objective of this research was to independently establish the accuracy of the app. The second objective was to test the app's ability to successfully deliver notification of rewards to the app users who carpool within a predetermined highway facility that has a geofence marked around them. So it's important to know that this study was a simulation based on the data collected by the app. This study did not test the technology's ability to communicate or integrate with a traffic management center or a toll payment function of a managed lanes authority. So we used 3 locations to test the mobile app. The main one was Interstate 95 from Miami to Stuart, Florida. And then as our testing process went on, we were wanting to invite more participants. And so we opened it up to a facility, a segment on Interstate 275 in the Tampa Bay area, and then a segment on Interstate 15 in the Salt Lake City area of Utah. Now in I-95, the carpoolers could use the express lanes or they could use the general purpose lanes. And it's important to note that participation in testing the mobile app by the carpoolers did not grant free access to the I-95 express lanes as part of the study. So some carpoolers already had registered as a carpool with South Florida Commuter Services, and they may already be using the express lanes, but then others may have simply used the general purpose lanes for the purpose of helping us test the pilot. So if they did use the I-95 express lanes, including this required advance registration of an HOV3 carpool, then they would get the toll-free access. And these same participants could also earn the rewards for the pilot participation. Most of our participants were 2-person carpools. So now testing the app required traveling along any segment within one of the 3 polygons that were demarcated by a GPS coordinates that contained the facility. And this GPS enabled detection of the carpool passing into a highway polygon and then passing out of it. And this simulated the condition under which a carpool would be detected if the app were used for granting express lane toll-free access or toll credits. So a little bit about the app. Ride Flag Technologies Incorporated, or Ride Flag, holds several patents related to its proprietary vehicle occupancy detection technology. And this is delivered by the app that we tested. The concept used by Ride Flag was to use vehicle occupancy detection camera technology and integrate that with modern smartphone capabilities. So by doing this, you remove the costs of equipment purchase, installation, and maintenance. You remove the operational limitations of deploying the technology at specific roadside locations. And you also remove the challenges of accurately verifying vehicle occupancy using outdoor equipment such as counting occupants that might not be visible due to tinted glass or glare, or the backseat occupants are obstructed from view. And the app is designed to collect and report data. The app is configurable across locations and facilities, as well as pricing rules, and it provides notification and delivery of rewards, and it eliminates the need for enforcement. So this is because the app determines whether the vehicle is a carpool or a single occupant vehicle. So if it's determined that the vehicle is an SOV, then the total account is simply charged the full price. So when we first started this study, we applied the National Science Foundation's Innovation Core technology transfer. And this is a process that enabled us to explore the business case for the vehicle occupancy detection capability and the merits of the innovative mobile app technology relative to the needs and preferences of identified markets. And the markets that we reached out to were two. One is the customer market, which are motorists and their passengers. And then another market would be the district offices in the Florida Department of Transportation, Transportation Systems Management, and Operations departments. And so in this table, what I did was, after we interviewed several people from both of these customer groups, we categorized all of the different comments that we received, and this is just a compilation. So on the left column, these are the kinds of comments that we got from motorists and their passengers. So things like, well, what if we forget to verify occupancy? What happens? They were afraid that perhaps verifying occupancy would be added inconvenience. And they said, well, if you're going to have us carpool, we definitely need incentives and rewards. And then this middle column in the table were comments that both customer groups, both the motorists as well as the TSMO professionals said. So one of them was a concern about using the phone while driving. And then another one was that people have so many apps on their phone already. It's like, oh no, another app. So the idea was, well, what about if the app had multiple functions? And then in the rightmost column were the kinds of questions that the TSMO professionals had. They're very sensitive to customer perceptions. They would require a high rate of validation accuracy. They want to make sure that users of the app cannot trick the app. They're concerned for customer data security and privacy. Also, the app must be accessible to the entire public, the entirety of roadway users, and then concern about the possibility of, well, if we adopt this app and use it, if we don't have sufficient technical support in-house, then what happens? So there was a concern for some degree of vulnerability. So let's talk about the app carpool verification process. So the app features group verification, where the number of occupants needed to achieve the HOV requirement, they gather at the same time in the same camera frame of one vehicle occupant's smartphone before starting the trip. And so the app features this proprietary technology that determines that the vehicle occupant, the faces are real. They're not a mannequin or a cardboard cutout like what you saw me put there. But they can detect a real face with a high degree of certainty, and the app requires vehicle occupancy re-verification at the end of the trip, meaning that the occupants gather again in the same camera frame and snap an image that the app uses to calculate a probability of realness as well as similarity of the facial images recorded at the start of the trip. So this re-verification of vehicle occupancy at the end of the trip is to make sure that the occupants of the vehicle at the end of the trip are the same individuals as those in the vehicle at the beginning of the trip. And so this ensures that an HOV trip took place. And so there was a carpooler test process And this study was supported by two regional commuter assistance programs in Florida that helped us publicize and send out notifications to their customer databases of registered carpoolers. These were South Florida Commuter Services and Commute Tampa Bay of the Tampa Bay Regional Transit Authority. So the evaluators actively recruited volunteer carpoolers between July 2022 and December 2022, and the interested carpoolers accessed the study webpage where they could find more information about the study and access an agreement to participate. And they filled out this agreement to participate and provided us with permission to collect their data about their carpool trips, including digital photos of them for validation purposes, and also agree to be tracked by GIS. And the maximum number of logged carpool trips that they were allowed to take was 36. Participants could earn $10 to download the app and log their first validated carpool trip. Plus, they could earn $5 per logged carpool trip thereafter, up to a maximum of 36 logged validated carpool trips. And then they could also earn an additional $5 for completing an exit survey for a possible total of $190 per carpool participant. And we used Amazon e-gift card value coupon codes that were then emailed to the participants. And so we got a small but very dedicated group of carpoolers that stuck with us for the study and worked with us. So there were 43 individuals who downloaded the app, which includes 29 individuals who were ages 25 to 44, another 5 who were age 18 to 24. There were 6 individuals who were ages 45 to 59, and then there were 3 individuals who were aged 60 and over. And then of the 29 individuals who went on to attempt to log at least one validated carpool trip, 16 were from South Florida, 9 were from the Tampa Bay area, and 4 were from Utah. And so in aggregate, these participants logged a total of 837 carpool trips. And so this table illustrates the percentage of the volunteers using either an iPhone or an Android phone. What we found is throughout the US, Android accounts for about 45% of the mobile phone operating system, while iOS is about 55%. Now, for our study, the participants, about 16% of them used Android phones, and another almost 84% used iPhones. And so I'm going to go through the process of logging a carpool trip. So there's a series of, there were a sequence of prompts that the carpoolers would encounter when they used the app to verify their carpool. And this included a before trip verification and a post-trip re-verification. So these are the screenshots that they would see. These are the first 4 out of 8. So on the left is the home screen, and users would tap on Verify Carpool to start the carpool verification. And the app has GPS enabled, which is evident by the green dot that represents the user's current location. So tapping the green circle in the upper left corner is a menu that reveals other options, such as how many carpool credits a user has earned, and the upper right corner contains a gray 0 that indicates that the carpool trip has yet to be verified. So after tapping Verify Carpool, the camera opens and the user begins to verify their occupancy. So in this example, the user is attempting to verify 3 occupants in their carpool. So if the app recognizes a human face, a gray box appears around their face, and the app is determining whether the face it detects is a real human and not a fake face or a replica of a human face. After a moment, the gray frame around the occupant's face will turn green, indicating that the occupant has been successfully verified. Then, following the verification process, the user is then brought back to the home screen. What was once a green Verify Carpool becomes an End Trip. However, so when the car is in motion, this button becomes inactive. and that is to deter distracted driving. So then, as the user enters the express lanes, they will be presented with a I-95 credit pending re-verification, reminding the user that their carpool credit is currently pending until they reconfirm their carpool occupancy once they leave the express lanes after they reach their destination. So these are the screenshots of the 4 last prompts a carpooler would encounter during the carpool verification process. So when they enter a designated express lane, as indicated by the HOV pin, it'll turn the HOV pin a solid green, indicating that the carpool credit for that express lane has been claimed. So once the user has exited the express lane, the app will change screens and reveal a white pop-up drawer reminding the user that they will need to re-verify their occupancy when parked. And then when they reach the destination and they stop, then tapping the red re-verify carpool opens the same camera sequence experienced during the initial verification, and it allows the user to re-verify their occupancy. So then the app displays a confirmation message that the carpool has been re-verified and the carpool credit has been awarded. And so in this specific study, that 3/36 basically just indicates that the carpoolers completed 3 verified carpools using the app out of a possible maximum of 36 verified carpools for participating in our study. So these are the kinds of data that we collected during the VOD process. So it includes a unique trip ID for each logged trip, a unique rider ID assigned to each occupant that's found in the camera frame, and then at the beginning of the trip, an average real score, which the app detects from the phone camera snapshot, and then it calculates, which is it's a computed probability that each face captured in the camera frame is real and not somebody holding up a photo. And then a re-verification takes place by capturing another average exit real score for each face in the camera frame. And then there's a similarity score that is computed from comparing the beginning and end real scores for each face. And this represents the app's calculation of relative similarity, that the faces at the beginning of the carpool trip matched the faces at the end of the carpool trip. And so testing the app began in July 2022. It continued for 7 months, and the carpool log data were transmitted from the mobile phones of app testers to RideFlag's secure server and stored in a Microsoft Access database. And RideFlag provided a file that included all the data for us to access and evaluate. So just for our pilot, the RideFlag staff incorporated changes to the app that allowed collecting actual digital photos concurrently with each verification and re-verification as facial dimension data were collected by the app. RideFlag staff also incorporated a map function that charted the location of the carpool entry into the geofenced facility that simulates the managed lanes, and then again at the location that the carpool exited the geofenced facility and a timestamp. So we were able to check the app's verification of the carpool against digital photos taken concurrently during the carpool test trips, as well as a map verifying their use of the facility. And so this is a confusion matrix that illustrates the 4 possible outcomes of the carpool verification accuracy. So the blocks in green represent an accurate occupancy determination by the app. So these would include a true positive, in which a real carpool, a high occupancy vehicle, HOV, is correctly identified as such. And then a true negative is a single occupant vehicle that is correctly identified as an SOV. And then the blocks in red and yellow represent an inaccurate occupancy determination by the app. So a false positive is an SOV, it's the yellow block, that is incorrectly identified as a carpool. And then there's a false negative, which would be a carpool that is incorrectly identified as an SOV. And so there were a total of 837 logged trips, and the data for all of these trips were manually reviewed by both Ride Flag and by the evaluators. And the evaluators flagged any logged carpool trips for which we had some questions, and these flag trips were provided to Ride Flag so that they could inspect them further. The Ride Flag staff reviewed all the trips that were flagged, and they submitted comments and explanations about each of these trips. And these comments provided more explanation to us about how the app works and cleared up any kinds of misinterpretations that we might have had about the results. And so here's an example. So for each trip by a user, evaluators could also access further details. And so this is what you'd see with the MS Access database. So these included a trip map generated from the GPS tracking, a trip start photo and trip end photo, and a table showing realness and facial geometry scores used to determine the vehicle occupancy. And so the comparison of the facial biometrics can determine that the faces measured prior to the start of the carpool trip are the same faces measured after the trip ends, even though there are variations in light and shadow, changes in facial expression, angle of the face, and other kinds of differences. So there were 54 inconclusive trips that are not included here in our results. So of these 54 inconclusive trips, 23 of them, the GPS was not tracking. And then the other 31, there were no photos or exit data, despite a map showing that the travel took place in the geofenced area. So because we could not independently confirm what happened, we set aside those 54 trips and we just evaluated the remaining 783 trips, which is represented here. So there were 648 true positives or logged carpool trips that were validated by the app. There was one false positive. We reviewed this trip and a different person was in the photo at the end of the trip. The false positive occurred because the similarity threshold was set too low. So interestingly, this similarity threshold had been changed earlier in the pilot because there had been some trips that were true carpools that had not been validated because the similarity threshold was too strict. So this takeaway here that we were learning is that in an actual deployment at the beginning of the launch use of the app, a shakeout period should be staged to fine-tune the settings of the app to make sure that we are minimizing the risk of any false positives or false negatives. So then there were also 13 false negative trips found among the unvalidated trips. And for 9 of these trips, the threshold for the similarity score was set too high. And once again, this threshold can be lowered and fine-tuned. For one of the false negatives, there was a data transfer issue, and for 3 of them, the issue was not known why the HOV was not validated. And then there were 121 true negatives. And so not all these true negatives were SOV trips. In fact, we only found 4 actual SOV trips that were correctly invalidated. However, a true carpool that did not correctly conduct the multi-step process of carpool validation would not get their carpool re-verified to earn the reward. So there were a number of reasons why a carpool trip might not be validated. So if they did not travel within the highway test segment for not only not travel, but they may have traveled inside the test segment, but for not a minimum distance that was set. Or they might have forgotten to re-verify. And this may have happened even though the carpoolers would receive a prompt in addition to the app screen visual prompt of re-verify HOV. Also, the user may not have just correctly used the app, which would result in an error. So for example, no exit re-verification data might have happened because the second face might not have been fully captured in the frame. And then there were also a number of instances where no trip was taken. So the trip was closed by the user or by the server due to inactivity. So we calculated the predictive value. So positive predictive value describes the proportion of positive predictions that were in fact true positives. So based upon the data that we collected, what we found was, so positive predictive value is equal to the number of true positives divided by the sum of the number of true positives and false positives. So that was a score of 0.9985. And then the negative predictive value describes the proportion of negative predictions that were, in fact, true negatives. So negative predictive value is the number of true negatives divided by the sum of true negatives plus false negatives, which was a score of 0.9030. Now, interestingly, if 9 of these occurrences of false negatives, there were 9 of them that were overly high signature threshold. If they were removed from the calculation, then the negative predictive value would have gone up to 0.968. And so we also conducted an exit survey. Unfortunately, we didn't get very many participants doing this, but we developed and distributed a brief exit survey to the 29 participants who downloaded the app and attempted to log carpool trips, in addition to 15 participants who downloaded the app, but they did not attempt to log a carpool trip. The evaluators received 24 responses to the exit survey. And so we asked a series of questions, and I'm going to share just a few here. So one of the questions was, how did you find your experience downloading the USF Carpool Study app? And so most of the respondents indicated that it was either easy or very easy. No one responded that it was difficult or very difficult. There was another question: how did you find your experience logging your first carpool trip using the app? And the same proportion of Android to iPhone users who downloaded the app also was reflected in those who filled out the exit survey. So the results appear to indicate that the Android users may have had more difficult experience logging their first carpool trip with the app than the iPhone users did. But once again, we had a very small sample size. And then we also asked, this table describes the responses when we asked the survey respondents what method of carpool validation would they prefer to use. And there were 2 choices. So either the existing method used in the South Florida region, that is, it's an annual online registration process that you have to do in advance of taking your carpool trips. Either that, or by validating your carpool immediately before and after each carpool trip using the app. And so the responses indicated that about half preferred the existing once-a-year registration process, 7 preferred the app, and 5 indicated no preference. Responses to this question may have been influenced by the fact that the recruited base of participants registering through the one-time registration system were already using this registration. And so some key outcomes. So during the pilot, 17 out of 25 individuals who successfully logged at least one validated carpool trip went on to log the maximum number of trips allowed in the study. And these were both Android and iPhone users who were able to log the maximum number of trips. And the app demonstrated correct verification of faces under a variety of circumstances, including changing light conditions. And the app demonstrated that it can be used to verify carpools and notify them that they were granted delivery of a reward. And here's some conclusions. So the app is configurable to set levels of strictness for the realness and the similarity scores regarding the degree of certainty for accuracy that is acceptable. And this comes down to a trade-off between accuracy and user-friendliness, because greater accuracy requires more time for the carpooler to verify and re-verify. So this suggests that the use of an app such as Ride Flag for delivering incentives to validated carpools must be accompanied by policy decisions regarding the level of willingness to accept a certain amount of misdeclarations while maximizing user convenience and incentivizing carpooling. So it also suggests that during early deployment of this type of vehicle occupancy detection, the strictness thresholds for realness and similarity should be tested so that its application reflects the managed lanes authorities, their preferences for balancing the rates of false positives and false negatives. And then during the pilot, um, continual learning from the collection of data enabled Ride Flag to modify the app to improve its performance. And these modifications included things like realness technology upgrades early in the pilot, adjusting the thresholds for realness and facial geometry, and addressing a camera capture logic issue. And this suggests that with added upgrades and adjustments, the accuracy of the app to detect vehicle occupancy will continue to increase, as well as improving user friendliness. The aggregated results of this study also were used to inform and enhance the app that was tested during the Metropolitan Transportation Commission Phase 1 pilot program in the San Francisco area. And then also for the app to work as it is designed, carpoolers are partly responsible for ensuring the validation of their carpool trip. So as one might expect, there's a learning curve among the users, such as remembering to capture the initial photo before starting your trip and validating their vehicle occupancy at the end as well. Carpoolers also have to look directly at the phone camera and wait for the verification signal to make sure that sufficient biometric facial data has successfully been recorded by the app so that the carpool trip can be validated. And the study team for this pilot elected to re-verify every carpool at the end of each carpool trip to establish false negative rates. But the app has the capability to be reconfigured for less frequent re-verifications at the end of the carpool trip. So what this means is that sponsors, toll authorities might prefer to re-verify a smaller subset of carpool trips, and these would be selected at random, and this is to reduce the burden on the user. So while the focus of the study was on potential use of this technology as applied to managed lanes operation, this app also could be used for other applications like rewarding carpooling in general, or incentivizing carpooling by providing preferential parking in the form of discounts or the best parking space locations. Another application could be tracking passenger miles traveled, and this would be very convenient and useful as road usage charging becomes more prevalent. And so finally, a few notes on future research. So the research resulted in these topics that could be further explored. So first, in this pilot, the app delivered a notification that a reward will be granted. So future research could test the automation of the delivery of the carpooling reward so that the reward is immediate and direct. Secondly, the app test was not integrated with the managed lane authorities' tolling operation. So in the future, back office integration could be explored, as Ride Flag's earlier testing in Utah demonstrated the app's capability. And it's the capability to connect to any agency's back office system through secure API calls. And then third, a social marketing approach could be applied to better understand the market segments who are potential app users. So for example, one could explore consumer resistance to the technology, such as the Ride Flag app, and explore what would make the app more attractive and what benefits would outweigh the barriers to using the app. Sometimes resistance and hesitancy can be addressed with public outreach and information, which is what commuter assistance programs do. So for example, the app technology is configured to restrict app use while the vehicle is in motion. However, verification must occur while the vehicle is stopped. But in our earlier NSF, the I-Core interviewing process, both the motorists and the transportation professionals voiced concerns about motorists using their phones while driving. So this is an example of a misconception that public outreach and education could resolve. And then lastly, our pilot of this app tested whether the app could accurately and reliably identify an SOV or a two-person carpool. So verification of more than two occupants in a vehicle is configurable with this app. And so future testing could gauge the accuracy of the app with verifying occupancy for HOV3 carpools. And so with that, we can open it up for questions. I know in the audience, we have representatives from Ride Flag Technologies Incorporated. And we're aware that since we tested this app, Ride Flag Technologies has been continuing to upgrade the app and incorporate improvements and test it in other places. And so we wanted to give Mike Papineau, who is the app developer and the CEO of Ride Flag, the opportunity to talk for a couple minutes about the progress so far. So Mike Papineau, we've unmuted you. So if you'd like to say a few words.
Sure, thank you very much. It's a great presentation. Thank you, Sarah, and thank you for NICR for selecting this project. We're a little bit of a different kind of company in that app-based HOV validation is the only thing we do. We've got over a dozen employees here, and again, we develop all of this technology, and we're solely focused on this because it's very novel technology. The investment is quite high. And that's because of that, and because we invest in this, we also hold, you'd mentioned patents. We actually hold 12 patents on this, and we continue aggressively expanding that to give our clients the confidence that we have the freedom to operate as well as protect our investments. So the important thing here is this is really the second version of 4 versions of the tool. This technology that you saw here is almost 3 years old, what was tested, and there's been quite a bit that's actually happened, since then. So as I mentioned, there's 4 versions of it. This was the second version. The third version of the tool we developed based on the learnings from this study, and we deployed that in the San Francisco market as a phase 1 deployment under contract with the Metropolitan Transportation Commission. I'll talk about that very briefly. And we had great results there. And then we've actually developed the 4th version of the tool, which is substantially improved from this, which is actually being fully commercialized now with several operators. Some of the key findings from our San Francisco version 3 is that the tool accurately verified occupants over 99% of the time. What's important too is that there are no false negatives, because even in the highly unlikely event that the app doesn't verify you because you may be too strict, or you might have a hat and a scarf around your face and sunglasses, there is the option to request credit. So there are no false negatives. Also importantly, no reported cases of anybody successfully cheating with pictures, mannequins, and dolls. I'm the CEO. I can't even cheat the tool. So we put a lot of investment in that. That's important. Also for San Francisco and all markets, really, equity is critical. And we found no issue at all, no pattern identified between skin tone and verification outcome. So that's important. And as well, from the consumer side, 87% of consumers in San Francisco area reported the app was very easy to use. And also overall high acceptance of the application, with 91% satisfied or very satisfied, with the tool. So we had a very successful phase 1 pilot with San Francisco. Now we're actually planning the next phase deployments with the Metropolitan Transportation Commission. And finally, as I mentioned, the tool is actually being fully commercialized now, along with several operators across the United States, and we're quite pleased, and we continue to make investments in this, and we're quite excited because we feel like we've finally been able to solve accurate HOV verification. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Mike.
Thank you, Mike. Okay, Sarah, let's there's quite a few questions that have come in through the trying to click too many buttons here at the same time. Quite a few questions that have come through already. So we'll take an opportunity to sort of moderate those Q&A questions. The first one says, how would verification be accomplished at the end of the trip if there were 3 carpoolers and one had a different approximate location than the others?
So the app is configurable to verify more than 2 faces. We did not test that. However, this is probably something that Mike could speak to in some of their testing of HOV3 um, tests. So I think it's the same. I mean, I guess what you're thinking is that the third occupant might be in the back seat, and so their face might be smaller. And so there might be some, potential issues with that.
Would you like me to
Yeah, Mike.
answer that? Yeah, so that's
Yeah.
an excellent question. So it really depends on the level of benefit that you're trying to give to the individual. If this is just for a managed lane, for instance, in a 2+ environment, we're only looking for 2 people. So in the San Francisco area, you may have started with 3, but if you end up with 2 people, then you're fine. You still get that benefit in the HOV lane. There are different rules and configurations for varied numbers of passengers based on the different rules. And we've got, different ways to track that. Like, for instance, what we do is we set up different, regions where different benefits might apply and others, don't, for instance. So on a, for instance, in the San Francisco Bay Area, they have what they call scale tolling. So some facilities have got HOV2, some HOV3. So the tool can actually accommodate that, based on the roads that you're actually going on. Does that answer your question?
Hopefully that person will respond if it did not. But thank you, Mike and Sarah. There's another question. Sarah, do you know if the report is available on the pilot project? Is that posted on the NYSER website?
So we are finalizing that now, and it should be on the website in a couple weeks.
Okay, perfect. Thank you, Sarah. The next question comes in and says, to use Ride Flag app, does the carpool have to be the same 2 or 3 people every time?
That's a great question. And this is actually one of the strengths of the Ride Fly app. So with South Florida Commuter Services, you have to register the carpool in advance, and it's the same people. All the participants of the carpool register as well. But with the Ride Flag app, it can be any 2 people, or any individuals that would make up the carpool. So it helps with casual carpooling. So that's another strength of this approach.
Great. When you were testing the app, did you try to trick it into wrongly verifying a carpool?
Actually, we did attempt to trick it, And actually, earlier in this presentation, there was an image of me holding up a mannequin. So I did test this app as an SOV. Yes, that's it. That's exactly it. This was I believe, a different version. So um, it was this version would tell the SOV motorists right from the start that um, the app would not be able to verify the carpool trip right from the get-go. And so I attempted over 30 times to get the app to verify my SOV and was not able to. Also during the test, our pilot, there were a couple individuals who did try to trick the app, and we did manually check all of the logged trips against the calculations and the determination of the validation that the app computed, and found that the app correctly flagged these as SOV trips. So there were a few people that held up magazine photos and things like that. So that was very interesting for us uh, to monitor and see what they were trying to do.
Let's see. Okay, the next question comes in and says, how did you address privacy concerns or issues?
So I guess that's probably an issue that the Transportation Systems Management and Operations districts with FDOT would be particularly concerned about. And so the way that this app works is after the carpool trip is verified and validated, the the data are not saved in the app. The data are erased. So that kind of data is not stored. For our pilot, it was recorded so that we could go back and take a look. But for an actual deployment, the data are not kept. Um, and so, that's one of the ways that, this privacy issue can be kind of alleviated the concern. But I think also this is kind of a good example of the kind of issue that people rightly have about different kinds of technologies. And I think that this is a role for commuter assistance programs going forward when new technology is introduced, such as this kind of an app that can successfully incentivize carpooling. Commuter assistance programs can play a role in providing information and outreach that helps people better understand how the technology works and to alleviate fears and anxieties about things like privacy. And I don't know if Mike would like to add anything more about that question.
Yeah, let me go ahead and unmute him again. Give me a second.
Yeah, thank you. That's a really good question. And it's actually a question that comes up with every agency that we deal with. It's the privacy element. And, we could talk about the technology at length in terms of what it does, but we go through extraordinary steps to protect the user's privacy. As an example, we use what we call edge technology, where we push the technology into the mobile phone itself. So it's the mobile phone that's actually doing all the heavy lifting and reporting to the agency how many people and how many real people are in the vehicle. And also the important thing too is we don't actually capture images and store them and send them up to the cloud. We have the capability of doing that, for the purposes of research, and some agencies have actually asked us, for that. But our technology actually determines the occupants, whether they're real, and quite a few other metrics. And then we just report, the HOV, because that's really the only thing, that we need. The beautiful thing about this is that, you know, the average American will take 3 to 4 selfies a day. So they're used to doing this, first of all. And second of all, when they know how this technology works, there really isn't, you know, any privacy concerns. And we've got separate research we did from San Francisco that showed that, you know, people are very, very comfortable using this technology for the purposes of HOV verification. Does that answer your question?
I think it does, Mike. Thank you so much. Okay, another question comes in, Sarah. We are ultimately we were looking to create carpools for those currently driving alone. Any thoughts on how this might improve mode shift over the current approach, and how does the current technology inaccuracy compare?
Okay, so I think there's two parts to the question. So, for this pilot, we recruited people who were already carpooling, just to help us test the accuracy of the vehicle occupancy detection. But the idea is that if this if this works as well as it does, and managed lanes authorities become confident that they can incentivize the use of their managed lanes to carpoolers and not have so many people, not have so many SOVs taking up capacity on their managed lanes, they're much more likely to participate in providing incentivization for carpoolers. And so as our highway system gets more and more congested, the need for managing that congestion through various methods, including incentivizing carpooling, is going to likely increase. And so this is one way. Being able to confidently incentivize carpooling is something that can be offered. And so this may attract SOV drivers that are looking to economize, and they're looking for a way to get to their destination more quickly. If the managed lane is managed in a way that speed is higher on the managed lane, and so putting all of these different pieces together should create motivation for some SOV drivers to switch to carpooling. And then there's another part of the question. Can you read the next part, the second part?
Yes, absolutely. It says, how does the current technology inaccuracy compare?
How does the current technology inaccuracy compare?
Yeah, I'm not
Hmm.
quite sure the
Yeah, okay. So the purpose of our pilot was um to determine the accuracy, and we found that there were in our sample of logged carpool trips some number of false negatives. The majority of them were as a result of an overly high similarity threshold that was set. And so a lot of these the issues with regard to false negatives has to do with setting the thresholds to alleviate that issue. And so um, we think that the any kind of inaccuracy is something that is can be improved over time based upon the work that we found with our pilot.
Can I just add one piece to that, Sarah,
Sure.
only if you got a moment? Okay, so
Yeah.
it's Mike again. So one of the things with capturing, you know, an image with a face is that, first of all, is it real? Is it real flesh? Okay, that's what you're looking for. Second of all, you know, are you trying to calculate whether it's the same people at the beginning and at the end of the trip? And the challenge is if you have the tool measure my face, for instance, right now, the metrics are going to be different if I'm looking like this or I'm looking like this. So if I start the carpool and I look like this, and I end the carpool and I'm looking like this, the tool will say, yeah, those are real people at the beginning and the end, but we can't determine whether it's the same person because I'm not looking straight in. So we've got tools to make sure that people are looking straight in, right? We won't get into all of that right now, but that's the trade-off between strictness and ease. And what we found, and coming out of the USF study, is that it's very rare for the composition of the carpool to change at the beginning and at the end. And some people might say, yeah, well, I could cheat. I could start with people at my home here. I can go into my car alone, and then I can, go to the office and re-verify with different people. And we really don't think that we think that's a fringe case, because, as you're going to go carpool, what are you going to do? Go to your family member and say, hey, I'm going to go cheat on the express lane. Can you come and, come and take your image? And then when you show up at work, you're going to do that with a coworker. And if so, how often are you going to do that? So we just don't think it needs to be that strict. If you look at hot lanes, high occupancy toll lanes, the cheating rates could be as high as 40%. If we can get that cheating down to a quarter of 1%, mission accomplished. So it's all about balance. And the good news is we figured that out, and the tool is configurable by agency and by user, frankly, on how strict we actually want to make it.
Thanks,
Thank you.
Mike.
And yeah, thank you. And there was a clarification from the person that asked the question. It says current systems make mistakes in determining vehicle occupancy. They were just curious how this compares.
Yeah,
that was
so if you're talking about, on lanes, for instance, a camera outside, which they'd call a vehicle occupancy detection camera, the issue with that is the false negatives, where there might be a child in a rear-facing back seat, for instance, that the camera doesn't capture. And many times somebody could be sleeping in the back seat. There could be tinted windows, and those false negatives are a big, big problem. And that's why there aren't very many VOD camera systems, and where there are VOD camera systems, they're very difficult, to enforce. The beauty about this is that it's an opt-in solution, not a catch me if you can, and the user knows upfront that they're actually validated. If for some reason the tool needs more information to validate, it's going to let you know, right up front, so that when you enter that managed lane, you've got the confidence that the tool has already verified you and there won't be a false negative. So we
great.
feel that this solves the problem, right,
Great.
with cheating on managed lanes.
Great. Thank you so much, Mike and Sarah. I know we are a few minutes over, but I know several of you have already completed the course evaluation, but that is on the training webinar evaluation that is on the screen. Feel free to click on that link. Sarah, did you have anything else you wanted to say prior to me wrapping it up?
Nope.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. We are working diligently on our nicer webcast series. That link is active. We currently do not have anything for the remainder of the year, but we do have a number of webinars already scheduled. Registration for each of those will be forthcoming. So again, on behalf of the National Institute for Congestion Reduction, thank you so much for attending today's webinar, and we'll see you all real soon. Bye, everybody.
Thanks, Stephanie.